All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Inspired Entrepreneurs Week. This speaker series is brought to you by the MSU Denver College of Business, Department of Management, and Center for Entrepreneurship. So my name is Becky Prater, and I'm the host today. Why I do this is it's really an important thing to me. We have Inspired Entrepreneurs Week because I believe for us to be able to see what it looks like to be an inspired entrepreneur, we are more likely to be one ourselves when we can see what it takes or see what it means. Like there's a difference between somebody who just owns a company and somebody who is creating a movement. I mean, there's a difference. And it's subtle. It's not even describable. So when you see this, I believe you can integrate it or embody it yourself someday, but only if you understand it in some way. So this is why we have Mark Ludy with us today. So Mark is an author, illustrator, and speaker who has spent 27 years helping people reconnect with imagination as a source of identity rather than performance. Through story, humor, and practical insights, he invites educators, leaders, and communities to notice the quiet choices that shape culture and lead with intention. So the books I have in my house are The Flower Man, The Farmer, and The Grump. And I've enjoyed many, many others. I appreciate your work so much. I mean,
Thank you.
I can't even believe how incredibly talented you are to bring a story to life. I appreciate it so much. Okay, so I want you to start and tell us like the story of your life, your entrepreneurial
Whoa.
experience. Yeah, that's what I want to see. So, yeah, share with us, the story of how you got into this, what it means to you, and we'll talk about shifting and changing later, but like pivoting and what made you change. But even I want to know the story of the coffee shop too. Like that's a part of the story. So, yeah, please.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So you guys, it's Becky, thank you for having me. And I'm so honored to be able to have this time. I ever since I was a wee little kiddo with hair, um, I loved to draw. I remember my I had an older brother, older sister, and they loved to draw. And I remember we'd all sit down at the table and draw a picture, and we would take that picture into our parents and say, which one's the best?
Oh,
And my parents were honest. I don't think I ever won any of those. But um, which is that's an odd story to start with. Sorry. But how I got into really getting into drawing was we'd go out to eat. And I remember going to Western Sizzlin' Steakhouse.
oh yeah.
And remember that place?
Hmm.
Oh, yeah. And I remember as we're waiting for our food, my dad, with a twinkle in his eye, would pull out the napkin and he'd say to us, let's draw something. And he would take out his corporate pen and had all these sparkles embedded in it. I'll never forget it. And he would draw an eyeball and then another one. And then he'd pass the napkin across to us and he'd say, here, now you draw something. And I would, what to draw. And I'd draw a nose, a spectacular nose. I've always liked noses. And pass it back to him. And what he would give back to me was a big juicy worm coming out one of the nostrils. And I would draw the mouth, and then he would draw a bald head because Ludy's no baldness. And he wouldn't leave that baldness alone. He'd paint a bullseye up on that bald head. He'd have a bird flapping overhead, eye in that bullseye, dropping a little present, if you will. And my dad made drawing fun. And when that next time the napkin would be passed, who would add the juicy worm? Who would put the hole in the head with a person waving, through the hole? Who would draw the bear waiting for the climber coming up the side of the head? It would be me.
Oh,
And I got to see how my dad, his creativity and how he saw things and how he played with things, the humor in that was a very inspiring thing to me as a young kid. And so my imagination was something that I fed. It was something that third grade, I remember I was drawing pictures of people in the classroom. I'd be drawing my teacher, actually, Miss Sage, I remember. And she came up to me and she goes, Mark, can you do a picture of all the kids? She set me to task instead of reprimanding me for my doodling obsession, which I did get a lot of in my life. Homework assignments were works of art. We're not going to talk about the letter grade slapped on it. That's a whole other story. But I was put to task to get to know each student. What did they like to do? What did they enjoy doing? And I would draw these caricatures of them. And if you look back at them, I remember actually a classmate of mine in that year, as an adult, reached out to me and showed me their picture that they still had. It was this big ovalish type head, big nose, and big eyes. I mean, it was cartoonish and it was pitiful, but it was something that was meaningful. And I got to experience in that moment the gift of doing art, of sharing. And so some of these are what played into my own journey. And and so that's so in actually doing art for a living, that's a crazy thing that I don't think I conjured at a young age. But I did terrible in school. I really struggled. I was the kind of kid that just some people learn by, it's like the teacher, the good teacher stands and says to the class, and some are like, oh, thank you, good teacher. I now understand. And then sometimes the teacher looks at the student that she just talked to and they have this blank stare and they're like, what'd you say? They don't get it. So the teacher tries to draw a picture to illustrate the point. Some see the picture and they go, oh, now I see. And some are like, what the heck is that thing? Some people need to, it's like take a toaster apart and put it back together again. They need a hands on.
Mhm.
And I recognize that I learn differently. I need to hear, I need to see. I would doodle. When I doodled, I would concentrate more. I would actually, in my unfocused mode, could take in. And when that was taken from me, and I had to just look like a good student and hear at the same time, I, I couldn't comprehend. And so I had a more tactile approach, and I don't think I'm alone in that. I think school is sometimes tailored to 30% of people.
Yeah.
It's like this is my sweet spot. This is how I learn, and we're all different kinds of learners. So for me to go into, I'm trying to pull to the answer of how did I start a business from my life. Um, uh, I'll say this: in school, I was just thinking about this. In school, I remember going through it going, what am I going to do with my life? I'm not doing good grade wise. I don't even know if I can get into a good college. Um, and I was like, what do I do? I liked art, but I pictured the shrunken cheeked or the hollow cheeked fetal position, barren room, lopping off your ear as the artist, the caricature version of, and we can only and I saw my dad, who was a workaholic, worked to the corporate man, always had the suit and tie and his wingtip shoes. And that looked pretty miserable. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be a musician. I loved to sing. Couldn't play an instrument, never really invested in that. And so I was like, what do I do? And I felt like this decision was so monumental,
Yeah.
so weighty. And I had at that moment, in that time, a thought. And the thought was this: Mark, you're a communicator.
Oh,
And why that shifted something in me is I always thought I had to become something like a title, artist, writer, business owner, millionaire. You know, you have all of these ideas that are just, they're not fleshed out in our mind at that time, but it's all we can project and see is what we have seen before, what other people have done. What my dad did is going, well, I guess I could do that. And this thought was so liberating to me. Mark, you're a communicator. And what best serves the message? What it basically was saying to me was this pen is a tool. It's not an end in of itself. Being a writer isn't an end. You're a communicator. You're so much more. And that led me at that age to really think in a different way and asking the question, what best serves the message?
Hmm.
In this moment, I'm not drawing for you. I'm speaking. I'm using this tool, this tongue, facial expressions, timing, and
Yeah.
it's the kind of thing where it opened me up to being able to say, you are a creative person that is a communicator, wishing to connect with people. And that was an epiphany for me, which led me down the path of um, I never went to college. Education is suspect on every single level, but I learned through every opportunity. I would find myself in a job and I would complain to my dad, going, "It's not what I want to do necessarily. I want more." And he would say, "You are where you are. There's something for you here."
Oh.
And and I realized not to see every moment as an end, or every job as but as an opportunity for me to grow and take and become. And that I look back over my history of working as a graphic designer for a company, IDEA in Caldwell, Idaho. And I went in and I said, my mom had said, do greeting cards. And I was like, I'm not going to draw flowers. That's all I could conjure what greeting cards were, is flowers. And I was like, so she says, do what, create some ideas. And then we found there was a printer in town. And I went to him and I showed him my sketchbook. And I said, how much would it cost to make greeting cards that are like this? And they said, we want to hire you. And I said, well, I'm not looking for a job. And they said, how much? And I was like, how much? I mean, what kind of question is that? I was like, and I all of a sudden had this thought, pay me minimum wage. I don't want any pressure on my back. I could learn. And there in that place, uh, I came up with concepts, developed them out into printed material. And it was a phenomenal opportunity that was a stepping stone for me to go off then on my own, create my own ideas, fail, uh, get back up, keep doing. And because I didn't have any clue about business, I had no idea of how to make money. I had a weird relationship with money. It's like I was afraid of it. In truth, I think I realize now I was afraid of making money because I thought like money corrupted you and that you shouldn't want money. Not you need it, but I shouldn't have too much of it. And so I had this weird, complex kind of thing. And I've had a lot of those things in my life that I've had to work through and build a relationship with money and understand business from a different perspective. I don't know if that makes sense.
You don't even know how significant that is to me because I teach that very thing. I take people through meditations. We're going to do this in this particular class next week where we
Well,
understand our relationship to money because we are blocked to our own money. We're blocked to
that's true.
money flow because a lot of us have that same idea. So, Mark, you just like talked into exactly what we're going to be learning about next week. So
Beautiful.
that's
Beautiful.
amazing. I did not tell him to do that, let me tell you. That just was natural. It was natural connection. Hey, so how old were you when you heard Mark, you were a communicator? What was that age about?
High school. High
Okay.
school, senior year. Uh, Yeah,
Okay.
that's where I was.
Okay. Oh God, that's so cool. Okay. Okay, so then, so how, so where'd you go from there? So the greeting, so when you'd work for the printer, were you actually doing a line of your own greeting cards at that point?
It was it was IDEA Incorporated, and they were this huge printing house that was focused on the automotive industry.
Oh,
Yeah, auto body shops, different things like that. And so they would come to me and they'd say, "Mark, a customer has a brochure they want to create or an ad thing, and they're paying for 1 hour." And I had to. It freaked me out every single time. It's like this is what we want. You have 1 hour or 2 hours, and I'd be like, "Well, what the heck?" I mean, and I was afraid because you go through a situation like that, you get through it, and you're like, I don't know if there's anything in my well. I don't know if somebody comes to me and asks for an idea and they give me 2 hours. How do you just and so it was a phenomenal opportunity for me to recognize that the well never runs dry,
oh,
and there's always something there. Learning to mine for ideas and bring them out is a messy process, it and sometimes what you get in 2 hours ain't much at all. And sometimes gold comes forth. And so it was, but I was also given the opportunity to create a line of greeting cards using my illustrations, watercolor. I learned how to incorporate I love to draw with my ink pen.
hmm
I learned to be able to incorporate that, um, scan it into the computer, lift the ink to a transparent layer and color below it,
hmm
which saved so much time. But it was also, and it was, so there was great things that happened in that experience that really stick with me to this day. So, um, but that's where I started seeing the process of that I could the idea of actually being able to create a book was birthed there because I saw, wait a minute, so I have an idea here. They print it. I could see an idea all the way through.
Yeah.
That was great. But then I had to learn that once you print something and you have a book, you have this idea because we watched movies growing. Remember Field of Dreams?
Yeah.
Build it and they
Right.
will come. It's such a lie.
I know it is.
Build it and they will come. You give birth this arduous thing to all of a sudden go, here's a book, everybody. It's my book. The world doesn't know. They don't care. They haven't seen it before. They're not expecting it. And so to be able to take what you create and bring it to the world is a whole nother lesson, is a whole nother journey in of itself, no less important. And so, but we weren't taught business in school. We weren't taught, we think of this idea of business as, no, we just don't know what we don't know. And since we're not taught it in elementary, which I think should be taught, it's pretty, it's simple stuff and anybody can learn it.
Yeah.
It's just how we perceive it is so overwhelming. It's kind of like, here, learn how to play the piano, and you're like, donk, donk. How do you make good music? You have to stop and learn what each note sounds like, and that they're, and and so it's the kind of thing. Same with anything we have to learn is an arduous process and is terrifying. The unknown is what's terrifying to us. We
Mhm.
like safety. We like what's known. And so that's, yeah, I don't know if I answered that
Yes.
question.
Yes. Okay. So then, all right. So tell us about like how you moved from that to to more like what you do today. So what was the transition? Like what was the first book? How did you step into your kind of having your own business? I also want
Yeah.
to know about
Yeah.
how the secrets behind your marketing because I always think that's a it's just no man's land, I feel like.
Yeah. No, I hear you. It's so I I had this I did do a school of it was called a school of illustration. It was 3 months in Hawaii. I was more there because it was Hawaii.
I was going to
And
say.
and I like to illustrate, right? Um, and I did terrible in that school. It was so arduous, and they graded me. And I'm the one person in the school that actually, I think, did anything with the illustration. But it was a great experience for me to think about pictures and the power of it's kind of like words. The words that we speak shape. You telling a story is painting a picture in people's minds.
Mhm.
Words are powerful. Words that have been spoken to you can take you to the highest heights, washing over you. They can literally take you down to your knees, to your face. Words are powerful. And so words paint thousands of pictures, and pictures paint thousands of words. And so I had that thought about pictures. So, for example, The Flower Man, it's a wordless picture book about a man who comes to this town, buys this old shack, he fixes it up, and everything he touches turns to color. He plants a garden and he gives away a single little flower to a little girl who turns to color. And before you know it, this whole street bursts with color. If I said, what is this? What's going on in, let's say, this picture? Words are populating, and you are telling a story inside of you from those pictures. And so so in other words, here, every window tells a different story. There's over 60 stories to discover, which means this thin little book is a volume that's over 60,000 words and counting, because every single person that sees it, so it was this thought about the power of pictures and this as a means to be able to create something. And so I created my first book, The Farmer, back in 1998. And it was about a man who loved his animals, tended his crops, but disaster strikes, everything's lost, and he has to sell his beloved cow to his terrible neighbors who do him nothing but wrong throughout the whole book. He rebuilds with the hope that the next year will bring an abundant harvest. But the next year, his whole garden is set ablaze by the neighbor boys, and everything is destroyed. And he has to sell his beloved pig, Patsy. Curly tailed piggy, loves to be tickled in just the right spot. Patsy has to be sold. And you see this man continue to persevere, hope, and trust. And in the end, there's one last disaster, but this time, who's in trouble? It's his neighbors. And who's there to help them but the farmer? And it was a beautiful story to me that originally had no words. It was originally just pictures because I was so intrigued with the idea of conveying a story in that way. And so I just here, all that I started with was really the gall to think, I think I could do this. And it was something that excited me. It was something at that time meaningful. And I could get excited about what it would offer to other people, what it could mean, not knowing what it would mean, but it was coming from a place in my own journey. And it was interesting in the creation of that book. I had been working on this thing for 6 months. I had a stack of pictures that I had drawn. And I called my dad and I said, Dad, I can't do this. Who am I kidding? Who am I kidding? Am I who I never went to college. I am a screw up, right? I did not meet the expectations. I remember my mom sitting across from me and my brother at the table going, "What did I do wrong?" We were like, "We're sitting right here. What are you talking about? What'd you do wrong?" And it was this thing where I was like, I had this, who am I? I don't know to do this, to create a book, to be an author, illustrator. Come on, this is ridiculous. I was an imposter.
Yeah.
And my dad, I remember what he said. He says, Mark, I get excited when you talk like this. I was like, what are you talking about? He says, I know that if you keep on going, great things are around the corner. I was like, yeah, whatever. And then he asked this fateful question to me at that time. He said, Mark, what would the farmer do? And I said, how dare you pull that one on me? How
Whoa.
dare? Of course, he'd persevere. He'd keep going. He'd follow through. And I picked up the pen again and I finished it. And we started with an investment of a book and having to put it out into the world, put it before people, and not knowing fully how to do it. I had another gentleman that was working with me toward that end. And that's how we got started. And people were like, I remember I'd go to shows and I had this book, The Farmer, and then I brought out the Grump, and people were like, do you sell the art? And I was like, seriously? You want to buy the art? And so I introduced a print, and people bought it. And it was like that. And so that's how it built. And the reception was positive. It encouraged me, it inspired me. And then the opportunity to speak in schools and different things, opportunities came. And I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And I was terrified every single time I stepped into it. And yeah, that's sort of how things have gone.
Wow. So
That's
how,
how it started.
oh my gosh. So how many books do you have now?
Uh, I think I've created probably about 13 or 14 books
Okay.
in my life. Right now on my website, there's only 4 or 5 right now that I'm offering. Um, so yeah, and I create art and greeting cards right now, puzzles, and yeah, that's some of the stuff that we've been doing.
Oh my gosh. Okay, and then I also know that you do custom work for people because you've done this for me. You did my two grandchildren. So talk about that because that is something really, really special. Like really special. Talk about that too.
Uh, well, that wasn't planned by me. I I remember I was between projects. Okay. And when I say between projects, what was my next big art piece I wanted to do? What was the next book or something? One of my passion projects, which I have a whole list of things that I like doing. And I asked my wife, I said, what do you think I should do next? And thinking she understood what I'm thinking. And so she said, why don't you do portraits of people's pets? They love their pets. And I was like, I know they do. And I was like, I do have a period of time. And so I opened it up. I just said, here, anybody want their pet drawn kind of thing. I'm just going to do it for a little blip. And the response was nuts. Um, Within a day, all the spots were filled. And the response was crazy. It was meaningful. It
Yeah,
was a
very much.
shared thing that touched on that chord within me of doing something that was meaningful to people. This mattered to them. And so I would open it up again between little projects. People would say, are you doing portraits? And I'd be like, maybe sometime. Right now I'm doing this. And so I would go periodic little spots where I would open it up and say, hey, does anybody want a portrait done? And it would fill up within a day. And it bothered me because while it's meaningful, it's not necessarily all that I want to be doing. I like it. And so sometimes I would take on more and I would be like, okay, this is too much. I need to get back to other things. I liked feeding it into as an opportunity, as something that I could give. And and so yeah, it's kind of a wild thing. And so I found out my wife was like, you should do something with all these portraits. And so I actually had published a book, Pets and Their People, which is of over in the last 3 years. It was crazy. I did over 500 portraits that are all combined in that book and celebrate the bond we have with our pets. And and so it was just the portraits of the pets or pets with their people that were in that book. And so it was, yeah, it was a meaningful little thing. So again, I don't have any intention to do it again, but I probably will.
Mm.
I don't know when, but it's been that kind of thing that I just feed into my life at little moments. And yeah, it's cool to hear your response to it because oftentimes I send this off to people and I don't know if it hit the mark, if it resonated with them, if it connected or not. It's just I do it and I have to, and so you have to let go of a lot of things. Is that kind of in that space of saying I'm doing it, I'm giving it my best, and I'm trying to put my heart into it and thoughtfulness in this creation, knowing sometimes what I'm sending off. I don't know if it really hit the mark or not, but it's like this is the best I got in this time, and so I would allot myself so much time and say, like my early days in IDEA, you have 1 hour or whatever it might be, and it's like, okay, give it and send it. So
Is it
that's what.
how much time do you dedicate to one of those portraits usually? About an hour?
No, not necessarily. Sometimes it was 25 minutes probably to sometimes over an hour.
Mm.
It depended on the piece. Some people were, and then some went a lot longer because they had multiple pets, like four in one or something like that, some even more. And so it would, yeah, so it would depend on what it was. But I didn't spend, it was like, this is a rough, I had to always clarify, this is a rough drawing. This is a quick give. It's not a some major kind of undertaking kind of thing.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so you said you only had 4 books available online. Is it because, like, do you have to have them printed in batches, and so that would mean storage, and now you just do 4 at a time, or why that?
Uh, okay, so there's books like When I Was a Girl, I Dreamed, When I Was a Boy, I Dreamed.
Yeah.
For over 20 years, they were remarkable. And they would still be selling, but we decided to let it stop.
Okay.
We let some books go out of print, and we decided let's focus on what we have before us. And because that's just a business decision, it's not that I can't bring them back,
Oh yeah.
but I have trimmed so much out of my life um, to have more focus.
Okay.
Because what you can often find in business is you set up cannons going here and here, and you have to manage it all. And I would say this to my wife more than a few times. I feel so spread thin.
Oh, uh-huh.
And so combating that, recognizing a sharp point is better than a blunt, flat, thing. And so if I want to make impact, that sharp focus. And so I've been trying to whittle down so much of my life and what I'm doing that what I do when I do it is sharp and effective. I don't know if that makes sense. In my mind, it encapsulates so much of what I know in my own life and business, uh, and that's been a powerful thing. Like, for example, this book. We just reprinted this one.
Oh,
Uh, this is um, this book I did 20 years ago, and I it's been crazy. I had the mayor of Madisonville, Kentucky, contact me, and he said he wanted to meet me. And I was like, he wants to meet me. Yeah, can he come out and meet you? Fly out and meet you? And I was like, he doesn't. He just send me an email, call me, Zoom. No, he wants to meet you. This book has changed his life. And I was like, uh, and I was busy in show season. I was like, and my wife would say, "What does he want to meet you with?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't know if he's just gonna say this is, I don't know what his motive." And so I pushed him off. And it was 6 months later, his assistant contacted. I said, he wants to come and meet you. Can he have a lunch with you? Can he just meet with you?" And I was like, okay. And I even was like, 2 hours is all. I mean, I just didn't know it was awkward to me. And so we met. He brought an entourage of three others, and we spent 7 hours together. Love this guy. And I'm I'm so glad I got past me to be able to listen to what he had to say and how he's using this flower man in leadership all across Kentucky and I don't know, it's Illinois and different places that they're using this book, not with schools so much, but in leadership. And
Wow.
I was like, that's wild. And what evolved from that was me going to Kentucky, spending a week there, going into every school. They put this book in the hands of every elementary school kid
Oh
in
my,
the county. And I got to speak to all the business leaders. And what it was is I recognized, it's kind of like for me, I'd be like, if you said, "Oh, I love the Jujo," I'd be like, "Yeah, that's great. But have you seen my new thing? Have you seen my new book? That's old. That's old."
yeah, yeah.
Okay, 20 years ago, I did this thing, but it rose up its head and said, "My time is now."
I love that.
This message in here is more timely than it even was then. I don't know if it really was, but
Mhm.
the message in this has evolved in my own heart and life where I see it differently. And so my journey is to be able to, that's my pivot right now, is being able to put more emphasis on this book and bring it forth to people of all ages. And it's been an extraordinary thing to be able to listen to that, respond to that, and give it room and
Mhm.
embrace it and get over myself, get over my ego that would say, "Hey, look at my new thing." To actually say, "Let's treasure what we have done. Let's put attention on this." And so that's I can't fully remember your question, but that was where I was going.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. Okay, so I see that book in particular as, wouldn't it be beautiful to have that as an animated short?
Yeah.
And isn't there an AI package you could load in that in and it would just make that happen for you? Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah. No, no. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. You're right. And I have thought about that forever. In fact, I did a school of animation with the intent. This was probably 18 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, and something happened I mean, a major thing happened in my family that caused me to actually have to leave the school and come back. But that was my intent, was to be able to bring this into the world. So yes, I 100% think it's a great idea. And people have done it all over the world. People have done their own artistic, putting music to it and words and creativity in different ways. And people have done things with animation to a limited degree that I've seen. And
Hmm.
so it's wild to see what people will take and do with what you create.
Yeah.
Because you have intent oftentimes with what you set out to do. And little do you know what others can extrapolate and take and the meaning they make from what you create. And that's that's been an eye-opening experience for me.
Oh, it's so incredible. Oh my gosh. Okay, so tell us how. I know I'm not even getting to the other questions that I was going to ask because it's just too much fun. So I want to know like how I've seen you at different markets like holiday markets, and that's a great place to sell books. But like, what are all the different ways you get your books to people?
Uh, okay, so I have my website, markludy.com,
Mhm.
and I sell there, but that usually is generated by the places that I go.
Okay.
So when I speak in schools or places, um, usually there's the ripple effect of sales of or people interest in what it is that I do. Um, when I do art shows, that's call that money. I mean, that's like that's people are coming to me, and if they like, they take. And lines beget lines, and it can be a crazy, incredible experience. And they also meet the artist,
Yeah.
and that's a unique experience for people. Um, Oftentimes, you'll see art, and when you meet the artist, you either like the art less or more because of the relationship involved in it. And
So
so
true.
I've learned relationship is a big deal. Being able to connect with people um, is important. And this, I mean, I think to think that just the art alone matters. Sometimes it does, but I think people buy emotionally, and so the relationship engaged, the low pressure to be able when I let off and say, hey, if you like it, great. There's no pressure. I want people to not have regrets or when they purchase from me. And so doing art shows has been incredible. Speaking has been great. I stepped away from speaking COVID. I was
Mhm.
actually going to move full time into just speaking at that time because my wife said, um, she said, have you ever done an analysis of how much you make speaking versus art shows? And I was like, hands down, art shows is where it's at. I mean, now you have to understand that preparing for an art show, having all the arts, all the books, the travel to, the setup, doing the show, which is maybe 1, 2, 3 days, and then the tear down, travel back, recoup, deal with orders that have come in, all this. So yeah, taking into account all of that, the 2 days of the art show are extraordinary. But when my wife had me do the task of actually looking at my speaking. I get an honorarium, I get money, and then there's potential sales. Not always, but sales are usually I have an average because I track these things. And I recognized it's so much easier too. The travel, the setup, all these things. I'm like, this is, what am I thinking? And so I was like, hands down, after looking at the numbers and the story that the numbers told, but also in alignment of what do I want? What kind
Yeah.
of lifestyle do I want? I love the art shows and I love the interaction with the speaking, connecting with people. It's a totally different thing. I don't have this opportunity. I don't get to talk about ideas and all these things when I'm at an art show. It's a hey, how are you doing? Kind of thing. It's very surface meaningful in its own way because I'm connecting with people, but the speaking I enjoy. So I evaluated those things, and I recognized that the speaking held more potential, opportunity, and but COVID happened, and I went full bore into speaking. You're talking to me at a time where I'm not. I had made a decision end of last year. This next year, I'm not doing any art shows.
Oh,
So, yeah, this is a major turn for me. And I've been going back into it's kind of a school um, for speaking and really being able to develop out my business around speaking and the opportunities that I can to be able to handle it better. Because when I would speak, people would say, "Hey, can you come speak?" I have charisma, I have story. I have that going for me, but I didn't intentionally really concentrate on how I could teach more or give more. And so I was always sliding, just sliding along in that because I could do it and people responded to it. I'm now having to go, how can I give more? When if I'm doing this intentionally, I think I can raise my game. I think I can give more. I think I can teach and inspire instead of just preach, if you will.
Hmm.
And so that's my pivot in this time. And it's really special. And this flower man, I mean, I'm going, I have here, this is books that just came in that are being signed. We're giving these are going to every kid in two different schools, 1,000 books of the Flower Man this next Monday. And this is, and I get to spend a day with these kids. This is exciting, business wise, great. Uh, and it's cool when you can marry those two things.
Yeah.
The passion of why you do what you do, because when you're doing something you don't really like, but it's for the money, when we get this idea of this fixed idea of how people will perceive us, how we'll perceive ourselves, um, you end up wanting and you can quickly burn out. When you can merge, what is it that you love doing? What are you passionate about? What do you want? When you have a want, and we have a weird, like money, a weird relationship with wanting, because we think, well, I shouldn't want what I want. It's easier for me to think what I don't want or what I want for you. But what I want for me is such a critical thing to look into because we have it's not good or bad what our wants, they all come from different places, from trauma, from things that we lacked to beautiful things that we experienced or we want more of. And so it's a neutral thing, and when we allow ourselves to look at our wants, it's the aim. In other words, if you were to go on a journey, where are you going? If you don't know where you're going, where are you going to end up?
Right.
And
Hmm.
I actually thought that if I didn't do what I want, I did what I should, what others wanted for me, what would be acceptable to others, I would one day, the transaction would be, I would get what I want, or maybe what was good for me, right? But not what I wanted.
Yeah.
Only you can determine what your wants are. They're unique to you, and what you wanted at 7 is different than what you want today. Our wants change. They're not, it's in the, and there's, it's, so it's curiosity. When you apply curiosity and neutrality
Mm.
to your want, you're understanding your want is a difficult thing in of itself. And it's the first stage that, because if you're not aiming, what are you shooting at? What's your target? What's the bullseye? You have to have that. When I go and speak, what am I giving? What will people take away? What will they remember? When I create a book, I ask those same questions. What is the end result? What am I giving? What is your core theme? And when you concentrate on that, it gives you a target. And if it has built in thought and meaning and the why behind it, why you do that, that you can handle cold calls, people hanging up on you left and right, because you have an aim, you have a vision, you have something more that you're stepping into, and you will go through the struggle. You will keep writing that book. You will finish. And that is you need the want, you need the aim.
Yeah.
And then there's the choice and the choosing and the powerfulness of that, because to not choose is a choice. There is a act of the will, and then is the doing. And we have these romantic ideas of creating a book or doing this thing. And the truth is, when you step into something, here's an interesting point. I think oftentimes we think we need to have courage or confidence before we set off. And the reality is courage is the act of choosing to do.
Mm. Hmm. Right.
Confidence comes after the choice. It never comes before. When you start playing that piano, and you start learning how music comes together, you get confidence. To the ability that you learn and grow, you grow in confidence. Confidence comes from doing. And so, this idea that we need stuff, and that's why imposter syndrome, who am I to do this? Who are you to do the business you want to do? You could ask that question. It never is going to have a satisfying response. There's no answer to that. In other words, when you're asking, am I enough? You'll never be enough if you're asking that question. The question is evil in my mind. It's an evil question that it plagued my life for most of it. And so I think it's the reality is you are who you are. You know everything you know to this point. You have everything you don't have more than what you have. You don't know more than what you have in this moment.
Right. Hmm.
Tomorrow isn't fixed. And our perspective of our past can change depending on the lens we look through. You
Hmm.
can look at the past in different ways. So this is the realest moment we all have is this very moment. And the choices you make have no certainty attached to them. And it's the kind of thing, and when I boil it down, it's like you can either have what others want for your life or what you want.
It's so true.
And it's just a simple thing, but it's a framework that if you look at tomorrow's and what will be, why not be about what you want to be doing and trying to do it in the best possible way you can? And as you do that, you will grow, you will get confidence, you will become aware of things, you will fall flat, you will make mistakes. But when you have that vision, you can keep going and you will become the person. All of the choices you've made to this point have made you who you are. And what a beautiful thing to just, when we stop labeling it and judging things and you just accept and look at you. So ultimately, in the end, I recognize my business journey has led me to it is a relationship with me
Hmm.
that is ultimately what matters. At the end of my day, I'm going to wake up with me. And the choices I make are my choices. I'm responsible for every choice I make.
Yeah.
We have a victim mentality that we're like, oh, this because of this I'm here, or this is, and it's like, when we take responsibility for us, our choices, our wants, our actions, that's an empowering place. And
Yes.
so it's how you frame your relationship with you and you working through what you need to work through so as to achieve what it is you want and recognize you have everything you need in you. You can do this. You can, but it's up to you what you choose. So that's the kind of stuff that I mull over.
Oh my gosh, I just love that. Hey, now do you sell through retailers like Barnes and Noble and Amazon and some of those places?
Okay, so I sell wholesale. I focus. Okay, so to answer that further, so I do retail. I would do shows, and my wife was always like, "Why do you not sell wholesale?" And now my books are sold nationwide. Those are through a distributor, and I had this issue with me of going, I don't want to go into wholesalers and say, hey, can you carry my book? And I would just my ego, and I just was like, that's so awkward. And
Mhm.
so but I was like, she again phrased and said she had to sit down with me, and she goes, why are you not stop before you react to this idea of wholesale? Really look at it. And again, when I would listen and I do my work, I was like, darn it, wholesale is a brilliant concept.
Yeah, no
and,
doubt,
and it
right?
was something that it was like, I didn't see myself as a business person
Yeah.
all my years. I didn't see myself as capable of running. I was always hoping somebody would buy my publishing house and relieve me of that. I just want to draw. I just want to create. I just want to have fun. That's what I wanted. And I always was shifting that, looking for the get. I just didn't want to, because I didn't think I had it in me. I
Mhm.
didn't think I had the capacity to become. I thought of myself in a very static way. This is who you are, Mark. You're an artist. That's all you're good at is drawing. And it was so self-limiting. It was so, and I would sabotage to maintain that until I realized you're that because that's all you've allowed. You
Oh,
could
right.
be so much more, Mark.
Oh, yeah.
Your capacity, you have limited your capacity. You have planted in this little cup who you think you are. And yeah, that's who you'll be. But you could transplant this into a huge pot and imagine where your roots could go and how far you could grow.
Right. Yeah.
So I was limiting myself in so many respects. And so I am in a journey right now of becoming, of reaching out, of learning, of recognizing what is my capacity. And it's been beautiful. I mean, it's been an exciting, rewarding journey. And I don't look at my past. I can look at how I diminished things or how I kept myself smaller. But that's just part of my story.
Mhm.
That's where I've been. That's where I've come through. And but now I have a regained vision.
Mhm.
And
Wow.
yeah, it's been exciting.
Oh my gosh. Hey, okay, so tell us about what about books in the works? Because I was, when you did the Jujo story, and it really seems like I don't know, based on a folk tale of, some African community or something. I
Yeah.
mean, there's so far you could go with just doing that with all kinds of different cultures, bringing about telling the stories of these cultures. I mean, it seems like you could be creating a new book every year, but how does that look for you? How does that process go? Like, when do you write a new book? There's a ton in the works or lots
Uh,
of,
I have several books I've worked on that are in different stages of development. And I I'm at a place right now. I have a book that I've been working on. You might have seen her ghost on the corner of 19th and Elm, the girl Fable Rue. But have you heard her story? That's how it begins. And it's
oh,
about a girl. It's got a monster in it, a boy, poop. It's got everything you want in a book. And so I have this book at a unique stage, and I have a few others. That's the furthest along one is Fable Rue. Um, but I'm also right now in my pivot in going through schooling and being challenged with coaching with speaking is I recognize there's this other arena that is not picture books, but is about how do you take ideas and bring them to fruition, which can apply to, I mean, kind of what we're talking about here. And so there's principles that I am discovering, learning, and finding language for that makes sense to me.
mhm,
And so I think if it makes sense for me, I think it could make sense for others.
mhm,
And so that's what I'm toying around with right now. I don't feel this weight at the moment to create another book, um, but I'm in the process of being able to. Uh, I spent all last night working on this ideas and how to simplify, how to organize it, how to keep it simple. In other words, one core idea, three takeaways, kind of thing. If I was to only have that, and I want to give so much more, there's so much I want to give, but it's like, how do you simplify what it is? What is it that you offer? What is it that you're giving? What do you want people to take away? They can't carry all of this. They can
yeah.
only carry what if you gave them one thing and they cracked it open. you know, that's a much more meaningful thing than lots of stuff.
Oh,
One meaningful gift. And I think when we think of our business that way, if we can bring it to that, where it's like, what are you giving? Don't muddy yourself. Don't try and be all things to all people. The niche is much more, no, the niche always makes more than the person, the jack of all trades.
yes.
And so it's when you have a niche, when there's a need and you're the solution for it, that's a very powerful thing to bring into your business model.
Oh yeah. Well, what's so interesting about what you just talked about is I just wrote a paper about how in schools we needed to teach intuitive development and help people understand how they can use their imagination because it's essentially taught out of us.
Yeah.
And so, if we
Yeah.
can somehow take these little super creative, intuitive beings that are, 0 to 7
Yeah.
and somehow bridge this space of bringing that innate gift into the real world the rest of their life, we would
Yes,
have a whole different world. And
we would.
it seems to me like what you're talking about is somehow making it possible for people to keep joy and keep imagination and tap into the self and that's, the teaching that could be the most impactful.
You're talking about the thing I'm most passionate about right now. And it's this reality. When I go into schools and I say, how many of you have a dream? Or how many of you are artists? Or how many of you, every hand goes up.
Yeah.
And I guarantee your hand went up when you were that young,
Yes,
right?
it
And
did.
I was
Yeah.
just in a Rotary speaking to all these older business people. And I was thinking about that. And I asked them, how many of you, um, are creative? How many of you, one hand in 100 went
Oh.
up, one hand. And it's an interesting thing. And I remembered back when okay, in my childhood, when I was in elementary school, I had the biggest imagination. I had a weeping willow tree in my backyard, which reached to the very heavens. And I would climb that thing. It became the Death Star. It was a ship on the high seas. It was my world. And it was something that I lived in, I played in, and I had epic adventures. And I was the hero. I don't know if you need to know
Oh,
that, but I
oh.
was. And there were enemies that needed to be defeated. And I remember I was deep in play. I was at the base of this weeping willow tree, and I heard something behind me. And it snapped me out of my revelry, but no one was there. So I kept on playing. And then I heard something, a little snicker. And I looked up. My neighbor's house, okay, on the other side of the fence, up in the upper window was Mrs. Arston leaning out her window watching me play.
Oh.
And she was delighting in watching me play. But I'll tell you this, it was the most awkward thing for me. I couldn't get in, I couldn't get into play anymore without looking over my shoulder. I was always wondering if Mrs. Arston or somebody else now was watching me. And so I had to take my play into my room
Oh,
and
yeah.
I had to play there. But it wasn't the same. It didn't have the breath, the sky. It didn't have the thunderstorms that are in the backdrop of my powerful moments. It was something. And so I recognized that something entered my life at that moment. And it was that people watch
Oh,
and
uh-huh.
people see. And then what was brought into my life was comparison.
Mm.
Am I an artist? Can I do this or that? Well, they can. How come they have hair? I don't, right? I mean, where do you stop? And so our culture cultivated this thing called comparison. And it didn't teach us to embrace who we were. It said it's time to grow up. It's time to push this aside to become. And we were handed a script of what it is to become, what it is to be acceptable. And we had to choose major choices. And all that time we suppressed who we are. And I think that's an important thing that most people have done is we have suppressed our creativity. We've played it safe. We don't try anymore new things because we're good at this. We know we are accepted here. This is a good thing. And so we we basically dial back our life. And so I believe in the reclaiming
Mm.
of who we are, our innate creativity, which stems from our curiosity, which is something beautiful and in every single person. But if we have suppressed it, we're afraid to unsuppress it because holy mackerel, what's that going to look like? It could be a total mess. And what will people think? And this idea of what people will think
Mhm.
has so consumed most of our lives that you've never even been asking the question, what do I think?
Mhm. Yeah,
Kind of
right.
like, what do I want? It's a scary question because it has been trained out of us.
Yeah.
And so the journey, the beautiful journey of life, I believe, is reclaiming that
Mhm.
and discovering your unique outlook and your unique way of expression. But that kind of stuff, that excites me. That's the thing that is meant so much to me. And I think that that's as a speaker, what is it that you're eating that nourishes you, that you love the taste of? Those are the things you want to share. And it's so that's been my journey is discovering what is it that's passionate to me
Mhm.
that I can share and that I think has made such a tremendous impact in my life.
Mhm.
And so it's trying to see those things for me and be able to then say, how do I relate this? How do I communicate this? How do how do I bridge understanding? And but ultimately that you can find understanding within yourself.
Mm. Oh my gosh, that's so powerful. Oh my gosh, I wish we had all day. I didn't even want to I didn't want to stop the recording so that we can ask questions because I just want to hear you talk. It's so good. Oh, we're it's so good. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But I'm going to because I really want other people to be able to ask questions. So thank you so much for being here and being with us and sharing
Thank
your
you.
amazing talent and wisdom.